nice clean round shoulder, cut to that funny angle. So now, need to let it dry. So hello, and welcome to today's Woodworking Wisdom. I'm Jason, some of you might have seen me before. So today, I'm going to look at trying to make a small bedside type table. Alright, so the original plan for this was something that Super Steph came up with, sent a picture down, can you make something similar to this? That's my challenge, there you go. So we have a picture we can probably show you as an inspirational thing. So we found something online, she's found that and gone, can you make it? How difficult can it be? You just get a picture. So from there, have to start planning out and thinking about what we're going to do. What material have we got? We've got some pine wire, we've got some here, quite easy to get hold of. You could use whatever you have. Alright, so we're going to use some pine. First stage, I've had to work out sizes and measurements that I want. So a bit of research, what height do you want, how deep do you want it? Do those sort of things online really easily now. Then I've drawn it up on a bit of plywood. Nice hard copy, something for me to look at and see how it's going. So I've got sizes, leg stuff, all those little things, okay? We've looked at how do we want to joint maybe the top box and the carcass. It could be biscuited, it could be dominoed, it could be mitred, it could be interlock mitre cutter. We've used dovetail, something a little bit more decorative and incredibly strong as a joint. So I've got that. Next thing I wanted to do, could we do something as offset leg? There's not many components in this, but a few little weird and wonderful things. So, round tenon, no lathe involved, I promised, okay? So, something as a shape coming down to almost a circle at the bottom. So we're going to go through the whole of that sequence of how you make that. And I've already had people see this and go, how do you make that? Right? Really simple, I promise, okay? So, in reality, we'll have our carcass and our legs coming in, alright? So, nothing too difficult. So, that's going to be quite easy to do, alright? There will obviously be plans for this. There's a description of the swings we've used. You can have a look at those. So, time to crack on. Hope you're going to watch this, see what's going on, maybe learn a few things. Maybe you might not use it for this project, but you can adapt it for something you're doing on your own. But you'll see those sequences, so time to get working. I nearly forgot. Obviously, if you like this, hit that subscribe button. Get those notifications of everything that's going to come through. Maybe give us the thumbs up. Think about all those little things through. All right? You will get engrossed with watching this. I'd like to know if you're enjoying it. I'm going to see you soon. All right? Off to the machining. All right. So we've got our wood. I've machined it up. I've left it for a couple of weeks with some clamps on it. So that will help keep it nice and flat. So we got the material for our legs. Some setup material, that's going to be important because we need something to make sure we can do. So that was the end of the boards. Instead of just leaving it at one side, I've machined it up. And then the wood for the project. Okay, so from that point, we're now going to start cutting stuff to length. So I'm going to set the path board up and get those cut to sizes. Right, so we're doing practice setup bit now. We've got the setup boards we're going to use really for the dovetail jig. But we also need to cut everything to length. The easiest way at the moment I can do it is on the path bench in here. I'm a bit stuck on what we can use for machinery. We could use mitre saw, table saw, a whole range of things. But we're going to use path system, just makes it easy. So I put path bench on top of the bench, piece of plywood underneath to raise it up so I don't damage that. I've got my work pieces, I've got the path studs, rail, clips, everything hopefully will come out nice and square. Support board the other side, keep it level. So we're up to there. Next thing, we can put our saw on. Let's bring that one in a little bit more to stop it dropping. That's good. Depth of cut, just reading over 20. I've got 18 and 8 for the guide rail. So we want about 26, 28. I'll go to 27 there. That's 26. Let's try that then. Okay, so we're just adjusting. That means we're going to score the plywood, hopefully, not cut through it onto the main bench. So I'm just checking where things are. Again, at this point, I want to just check things, see how things are progressing, what we're getting. It's pretty good, all right? So we've got a nice square corner at the moment. That's what we're checking for. So from there, going to repeat that aspect and set up and cut the boards to length. So now we're doing the workpiece. So we clamp these together. So we've got both boards which are given the width. We set up square, we're cutting them, then we can slide it through, accurately cut them to length. Right, so we cut it square one end, we've got them level, we're clamping it together, which really comes down to the dovetail jig. I can't get that width in the dovetail jig, I can get a single board. So I'm going to try something a little bit tricky, hopefully it'll work. So clamping it together, we've got our square cut. I've just screwed a length stop on here so we can then actually make it repeatable so we can cut these to length. We've then got to make up the next one, which is 200, then a 5, then another 2. So we're going to work along it, okay? So simply screwing on a length stop can be quite good if you've got a board you don't mind damaging. If you've got something you're worried about marking, we do a length stop kit we could put in. All right, so there are ways around that, all right, but that gives us the scope of doing this. We're up against our stops, clamped together, we're level, ready to go. So I can keep the boards together and know where they were cut, which length they are, just checking where direction. Actually got them good because they're opposite, so if there's any cupping, won't affect it. Marking them up, that's our height, so I put that one out the way. I've used a bit of MDF just as a spacer. So that's the difference between the length of the top and bottom and the sides. So let's take our spacer board back out. Slide back through and come back to our length stop. Down on here, checking everything's still level. I'm checking my ply underneath, which is supporting the cut. That looks good. So this will give us another long section, so top or bottom. Just going to do lines on there. Other thing might need to do, move our stop back into there so I can position those. I've got one in underneath here. Checking everything's square, so our board's parallel, length stop. Checking where we're sitting against. Need to move our clamp, I think that's going to be in the way. Move it down, that's just really about pinning it together. Everything's nice and parallel here, that's good. One guide rail back on. That there, that there. Okay, so that gives you an idea of our layout of our box we've got to make. Quite simple, as we said, we're going to do the dovetail joints, so we're going to jig them up. In a minute we'll get that sorted out. I'm going to do one box, then the other, and then the aim is really to bring the two together. A little bit risky in the aspect that I've got to try and make them the same. So that's the aspect of trying to use the path things, get everything the same length. So pretty good there, that's good. So should be able to get that right. So that's our layout. Next thing, going to start looking at the dovetail jig. So we cut our boards, cut them to length. I've got them laid out in the sequence, so actually the grain will continue around the three visual sides that we've got, the end, top, that's there. Next stage we're going to do dovetail jig. So we're going to actually look at that aspect of setting it up. As we said earlier, you could do a whole range of different joints on this. So you could do dovetail, you could do mitre or a biscuit or a domino. I don't have a domino, so we can't say that. So we're going to look at how we can make them interlock, something quite strong as well. With using the dovetail jig, I've got the scenario that I've got to keep the boards as separate at the moment and then glue them together when we've done the joint. A little bit trickier, so I'm going to come round there a bit. So we've done chest joint, I've set it up and I'm going to look at We got our pin and tails, so we know they're going to hold together nice. Had a bit of a play. Now, do you think they've got to get both boards to join together centrally and want them to look equal, which will be this side where the other half comes on when we glue it up. All right, so we get that little half dovetail. Want to get that exactly halfway. So we had to set that up in the jig. And actually to do that, I've done a little V cutter with single narrow point. That allows me to pinpoint the middle, and I've got to use both sides on the jig. So there is a stop either side, which is the black bit down under here. All right, so there's a stop. At the moment, we're set up to do the tails with the dovetail cutter. So we've got a dovetail cutter set in the router. We have a guide bush, which is also going to follow the comb in here and our shape. Alright, so at the moment we set there. The backboard on here, we're going to damage a little bit. I've gone for a piece of the pine that we're using. It's a bit softer than using something like MDF or plywood, so it won't damage the cutter as much, won't take the edge off. So at the moment, pretty much set the jig up as much as we need, which is good. Got a few things to play about with. So then we're going to start putting our boards in. We start to cut. I've got to set up the cutter depth. A few other little minor things, then we can get going. So at this stage, just got to finish setting up. Now, I'm just going to undo these two, more just to show you a couple of things underneath. So I'm sitting at the side stops. That's these black bits either side. All right. Now, I've already set those because I had to play around a little bit, and I want to get them set dead on for where I want to be. All right. So we have those. Then our comb's going to go back on. We're doing a through dovetail. Okay, got to adjust this possibly a little bit forward in a minute. We'll get to that. So we're going to go all the way through. So the dovetail cutter we're going to use to start with. That'll come all the way down through the work. We've got a backboard which will reduce the breakout. Due to the fact I want to join the two boards after we cut the joint, I've used a little point cutter, V cutter, to give me the central point between where those two boards are going to line up. So that gives me the half cut. Took a little bit of effort, but nothing too drastic. That's easier than trying to guess the middle of the dovetail cutter, but you can work right down to the point. So, got that board wise. Now, grab our first board, and from here, I'm going to get these two together. They go there. Okay, that one, then I've got to turn it over, so I've got to work on that side. So at the moment I'm going to put it there, going to check where they are. I've got the pencil lines on them to tell me how things are and how they line up. That's quite important for me. We want one board to start with, so let's bring it into here. This is going down in underneath. Done that knob up a little bit there and there. Going to slide it up, that going up against the black side stop down on here, which we just showed you. I can slide it along, check our handle tightness. I can add a bit more tension. That's quite good. That will hold the board. Next thing I need to look at, the backboard in behind, I want it to sit up against here squarely. Okay, join all the way through. That's good. This we're going to damage, but it's going to reduce the breakout, stop the splintering off the back. I've got a little bit of overhang here. I don't want to cut that. Well, that'll be apparent in a minute. We've got to go in. Checking now that things are level. So I might want to undo. Check how this feels. That's fantastic. That's good. Nice and level all the way across. I need to centralise these. Right? So there's a guideline. So I'm going to undo the two lock knobs which are underneath. I'm just going to wind that comb back. That's going to allow me to go back through that joint. Quick ways to check this looks equal. We can do a measure. Now I'm going to come from the very front edge to that line. Other end, very front edge to that line, a little bit on this edge. That's just trying to give me a square joint, if you like, parallel down the length. And due to that we've got wider board, that might be important. So digital vernier worth its weight in gold for that. That looks good. All right, so up to there. Locked off, as we said, the board in behind, stopping the damage. We've got to make sure everything is level here. So I'm just going to have a visual underneath to check that there. I could drop this down, that's good. Bring it back in place, great. Check it's level. Next thing, cutter depth. Going to use a scrap bit. This is one of the bits we cut off the end. I'd screw to the bench to make our stop. Going in under, get it level. We can draw a pencil line. Alright, so drop the board back out. There's my line, that's our thickness. We could do it up here, but it's just as quick to use that as a square stop. Back in place, checking things feel good. Already got the dovetail cutter in the router. I've got the right guide bush to follow the slot on here. So it's the bigger of the two. There's very little play between the two. There's a smaller one we're going to want to do the other half of the joint. Smaller in diameter. So let's just put them back out the way. So next thing, cutter depth. I've got to look in from underneath now, bring it round, undo the depth stop. Going to bring that down. So I can come down to my pencil line visually. So pencil line gives me the depth. Then bring the router in and we can set the cutter depth down to that line. Important bit at this stage, still unplugged. No power. So that's quite good. Other way we could set the depth, real simple. If we take the cutter down level to the board, which is the underside of the comb. So I can go to there, we could come further back. So just level with that surface, let's just check. Alright, undo the lock, there it is. My piece of material I can put into the depth stop point. That's the same thickness that we've just used, the bit we cut off. I could even tighten up a little bit, fine adjuster. Undo the lock on the back. I can bring it back down to that lock point. I can double check it if you want against my pencil line. Fantastic, that looks good. Alright, ideally, I want to be just a fraction deeper. And I'm talking 1/4 millimetre maximum, maybe 1/2 mil. Don't want loads, just so it clears it a little bit. We've got a little bit to clean up. What I don't want it being is too shallow and then having to level off all the face of the board because it's not high enough to do the joint properly. So we've got that cut, that's good, and set up. So we can double check our line, that's good on there. We know we're going to move along. Now, next problem scenario. This little bit on the side, that little corner bit, I don't want to lose. But actually, the guide bush will follow that hole. So I've got to concentrate physically to make sure we're entering here as our slot, not this one. I worked out we could have a safety measure for that. How about one of them on there? If I bring it right up to the router, where did I have it? Unclip it. That's what I've got to do. Reach around a bit. Let's move it back out. So I want to come second hole, which is that one. Alright, if I bring it in, that stops me entering the first one because the clamp's in the way. So that's just giving me something that I know I can't come right to there. Check we get the right hole. Alright, so something like a little clip-on clamp on the side here can be a little bit of a saviour. I don't want to damage that little bit of material. Okay, that's good. Next thing, and here, extraction nozzle. Okay, so this is magnetic and will fit in underneath. That's ready to go. So far we have set our depth, position of, we've adjusted the comb. I need to check we tightened everything up underneath, we locked our handle. Pretty much ready to go. Next little bit, we've set everything up. Extraction points on, I'm in line with where my board is, I've checked things are level. Put the router on the jig. Don't lift it on and off with it running. We can move it around. I've got my stop on this side to know that I've got to go into that hole. I can't come right to the edge. Or the one the other side we need in a minute. Everything's ready to go now. Major thing, no picking the router up and down, off whilst it's still rotating. This stage we know it's stopped. Let's just lift it off for you guys, a little bit more access. We want to check when we come along here. Now this is the one we said we didn't want to remove anything. How we're going back in. Now deliberately looked at and I've deliberately made one minor little mistake. Come along, we're clearing here. Look at this one. Not quite as deep. So what problems that could? I've got a little bit of a curve in each corner. the rest of them I come through all the way. So we haven't got a little curved edge. So I've got to go back, recut this out. Just that tiny little bit will make a difference. So before you take it out the jig, worth checking. Better now, it clears it. Other important thing with this, and quite amazing as a jig when we came up with the idea of making this, the extraction, there's very little on the floor anywhere else. It's collecting all that waste for me. I'm not getting covered in it, which is good. There's less dust floating about. All those things make a difference. Now, let's just drop this up. Tiny little bit inside here. Lovely piney fluffy particles. Put them back, we'll get rid of those. Okay, we've got our first board done. Going to undo the lock handle, going to lift it out. This looks big, that's deliberate at this stage. Going to put it back on the bench there. Can get the other one. Check their line up. That's going same orientation. Going back into the jig, but now we're going to use the right hand stop. And like I said, I've set both the stops up to make sure we're going to get something, hopefully, nice and central. Exactly the same process. Again, just really going to lift it off. So you guys got my access. I'm just now going to run down my line again, check we've cleared them. That's pretty good. A very nice thing with this, if you think about what I've done, nice, slow and controlled. Give it time to cut it, remove those particles, not smash it out of the way. If this is pine, it'll cut really easy. If I push too hard or too quickly, it will splinter the particles off, won't cut them nicely. So, got to be a bit patient. So, let's take that one out. They're going together, like that. Get how that join comes together, right in the middle. That look good. So, now, got to turn them over. So due that we're using the same backing board, support board, and we've already cut out the little half round cutouts. Right, so where the cutter comes in, there's nothing supporting this. As you come through the back, got to go nice and slowly. You don't want, I've got a little bit here, a little bit bust out on the corner where going through. And you've got to remember, this looks quite narrow as a cut. We're taking something a lot wider further down because of the dovetail shape. Again, visual check, everything looks good now. We know we've got that recess in behind, the little clamp on here, again ensuring you don't damage this corner when you could follow that through. Take our board out again, they come together. Next stage, gotta go again now. Important little tips, things you might not think about when doing this. First of all, extraction's fantastic for this. This will soon generate a lot of waste, very fluffy, especially on the pine. Lots of dust becomes airborne, so the extraction really does a good job. Okay. Next thing, how we go through each of the joints. If you're watching the video, you'll see my hands are down lower. Why not use the handles? Because as you push through, your weight is higher, you tend to tilt the router, you tend to over push it and you lift it up. That damages the joint. By being lower, there's more control. That's easier to control, less tilt action. Next thing, I tend to tilt the base a bit. Why? It makes it longer, it makes it more stable to feed in, come back, control it. So my right hand might lead, left hand will follow up to get it square. But all little things like that can make a difference. Little stop clamp on the end here, stopping me coming out and cutting something I don't want. You could even clamp on a piece of wood, a pencil, something else to act as a stop point. So there are ways of making it that you can offset that joint if we need to. But that control of having your hands lower, really important little point to use it with a dovetail jig. So we've done all our pins on here, so we've got to do our tails to go into them. They're done with a straight cutter. So next thing we've got to change the cutter. So undo the height. We're changing the cutter. The height's not going to be set for the next cut, so that doesn't matter. We can undo the collet. There's a double stop. So you undo it once, it will go loose, and then you've got to undo it again. Then our cutter will come out. We've also got to change the guide bush. A bit fiddly on the DeWalt. So a little spring clamp. I found a really good way of holding that bit, which keeps the collar down inside where actually there's an extraction fitting on this. Put the smaller one in. Get that clamp again. Do that up. You thought it was just for holding the wood, didn't you? Pinch it there. That's good. Check there's no play. Change from the dovetail. We're now going to the straight cutter. Okay, so our straight cutter put in. 2/3 of the cutter shank need to be held. So brought that up quite a long way. Do it up. So far we've changed the guide bush and the dovetail cutter. Next thing, got to play with the comb. I'll explain what we're going to do. So, our comb, we've got to take it off. We're going to turn it around 180 degrees. 4 screws. Next thing I want to do, going to change our board round. So I might just have to undo that end to get it out a little bit. Got a bit too much tension there. Pull that out. Quick clean. Little bit of dust up in there. Make sure everything's going to sit flat. If you're really worried, there's your side stops. We're not touching those. Two little pins here down between the black knob and the silver one. Got to play with those a little bit in a second. Our pine board I wanted to take out. That's where we've had it. We've got these little ridges we've made, dovetail shape. Going to turn it round. Why am I doing that? That means the recesses will all be in the same place. If we use the same side, we're going to nibble it away. There's no support in the back of the joint at all. So, lock it off, get it flat, undo, get this down onto it, flat and level. That's why we cleaned up. Okay. So our board, we've got our pencil line on the outside. That's important for me. I know that's got to go there, got to come in. Just going to pin it in place. Just going to move this bit. Got to get the position of them, where they intersect. So let's put that one in. This one forward. Want it in behind everything. Not pushing it forward. We don't want the boards tilting on one another. Want to get them square. We can check they're flat. They're pretty good. That's locked. Baseboard is locked. Next important bit, we have this scribe line. Comes down through here. All the way down through. Got to undo the black knobs. Adjust the silver one. And on there. So I'm winding those back at the moment. So I want to move this back. That's good. Got to do this side as well. So I'm undoing. Move that back a bit. Want to get that line to line up at this point with the intersect point of the two boards. Just playing around. This end's a bit too far. Lock it off. This end may be the same. Let's wind the silver one forward. It will bring it forward again. That's our start position with that line on the join point. Cutter depth, we can do exactly the same way as we did earlier. we can draw a line. So we can put the block in, a pencil, just pull a line along. We get a pencil line that tells me the depth. So give you an idea of that. There's our board thickness. Should relate to that. That's good. Depth stop. So we've got a double lock now, making sure nothing's going to move. So we're all set. We've made sure things are level, we're up against our stop, extraction nozzles, pretty central on it. We've set the cutter depth, ready to go. Doesn't matter where we start, we can start at the far end, we can start down here. So, on. Okay, so we started doing a cut and we got the resistance off the backboard at the moment. This point, again, checking how things are looking. Got one here, not quite straight. I've just drawn it on. We'll see if we can get you close up with the camera in a sec. Just running through, so checking with my fingertips. I want to damage the backboard in behind to make sure we're clearing. The guide bush is going right back to the back of that stop. Right, so important to have that visual check. Maybe a little bit deeper on this one as well, could be good. Got the outside one we've got to look at in a second. You're going to go, you've gone too far. You didn't do that on the other, I know. But we need that removed. So we've got to take this off of here. I don't even get a close up in there. So look at this material here. Definitely not straight. So before we move it, I'm going to correct it. So we've ironed that off. We've got rid of that little chip. Make sure it's nice and straight down through. They feel pretty good. Alright, so that's quite important. Now, this M1, I'm going to take it out. I might regret this. We've got this weird little bit. I want to lose this. Now, we could cut it off with a saw. But actually, whilst it's in here, I can move it over. That's where we were. I'm going to move over just a tiny bit. Clamp it back up. Check we're square. Check where we are. Take it off. This point, I've grabbed one of the boards. So we've got our sides, we've already done. We've got that wider end that's out there, that's the bit we've just looked at. We now want to know if things go together. I hope so. If anything, maybe a little bit tight. Tight is good. So a couple of supplies, what we got, things you might all have. So this needs to tap down just a little bit more. So we could go mallet. Mallet can be a bit brutal. It's coming down nicely. We could go sash clamp, but we've got to make sure we get the pressure point where we need it, in between the joints. So I might need to cut a couple of little buttons just to push that down. But at the moment, I'll tell you, as much as it's fractionally tight, it does go together. Look at that. Woo, tiny little bit, and I mean minute, pleased with that. Other side, just as good. There's a tiny little step. I'd expect there to be something. I've got to get rid of it. I know, little block plan when we're done. But that fits together nicely. A little bit tight. So, I want to loosen the joint fractionally. So we know it's a little bit tight. We want to loosen the joint. So let's show you what we can do. And what we're following with the guide bush now, we've got this shape. It's a pyramid shape almost if you continue it. So it tapers. If I move it back, it opens that gap up, makes it slightly wider. We take more material off the guide bush around here. So if I undo and I wind the silver knob and then wind it up a little bit, and we do the same the other end, keep it square. We've just come back fractionally, and you don't need a lot because you're widening across the width. There's both faces, so it makes it a little bit bigger. So that's a real easy way of just adjusting that joint. So if you're playing with something like oak, yeah, you need to adjust it a bit better because oak hasn't got any give. The pine will compress a little bit. So that should be better. We'll have that and give it a go. So this is the board we've just cut. We've taken the corner bit off. That we did on the left-hand side of the jig. Other half of that board that lines up with our pencil, going to here, going over to the right hand side, block it off, check it's square, get that set up. Just starting the cut. This is going to come back through where my pencil line is. Right? So I've just taken a little corner nibble out here, then I brought the router back over to make contact and come in here. This is going to stop this corner shattering off. If we come in and back out, that'll smash this corner off. Likewise, I've got to go slow when we get to the back. But that reality of doing a little bit here, breaks the fibres, come back across, severs them, then I can go back in now, take the waste out. So just moved along having a look. Again, fingertips, feeling what's going on in behind. Got one here, not as deep. Got the little bit half board we've got to do on the end like we did the other side. So really, I've got a little bit there, tiny lump on there. So that fingertip thing can be good at this stage just to see what's going on. Need to move it along fractionally so we can clear that little bit in the corner. So we get second joint. That's going to go together up in there, we know in a minute. Got to do the same the other end. So we've done one end of the top and bottom. I've got 6 more cuts still to do. So I'll get them done, we'll get you back in, have a look. So that's them dry fitted together. Alright, so just temporary at the moment, just really want to see how they go. And it's amazing how that little bit of adjustment we did on the comb, moving it back, open that joint up, just that tiny bit. Bottom one's fitting a bit easier to do. So, just looking at how things go, so let's blend this round. So you can see how things line up. A pencil line, that's good. Middle dovetail. With that, so it looks like a normal one. So once we glue the boards together, that'll be good. Have a nice thing, grain continues round the box from how we cut it. So even on the grain on here, we go from there, bring that round, back over. So that'll flow nicely all the way around when we look at it. So next bit really is going to be glue the boards together. Now we cut the dovetails, I can glue those together. Toyed around with the idea of do we glue it up as one and glue these together, or glue the boards and then glue them up. I'm going to glue the boards, okay? Just going to think it's just going to be a little bit easier. Nice thing with the joints, where the jointing surface is, nice and flush on here. So that little bit of effort in setting the jig up can be important, and make sure, if you like, do a bit of housekeeping when you're using it. Keep it clean, that's stopping debris building up. Have your extraction running, that's important. All those little bits, but checking things are clean and double checking when you're putting the boards in. The preparation between the boards, making sure things are square, is paramount to get a nice accurate joint. So having got them together, got to get it apart so we can glue those up. So let's just move one for a sec. Might want our mallet. Let's go one-handed clamp. Just going to swap the head round. I love this as a feature. Plenty of these, you can take that off. Now the box has been designed, obviously that's going to be the side next to your bed. The dovetails are designed so actually they will come apart off it. That's taking the weight, adding more structural strength. So we've got to push these apart. So we can use this. This saves beating it a little bit more with the mallet. How about that? Having done that bit, next stage really will be to carefully glue these into the pairs. Alright, just literally, if you like, butt joint on there. No biscuits or anything, just going to literally line them up. Going to make an end stop, probably on the bench using the path system. Clamp them up, get them nice and flush and just bring them together. The boards come together nicely as they are, so as long as I get things level, should be good. So that's quite an interesting way of using the past stuff. So we can actually use this as a gluing up platform as well now. So my aim really is to bring the two boards together, the two wedges, push that up. I've got a lot of control there. I've got less risk of the clamp pushing this up with it being very narrow. Problem with these are the short sections. If I try and put them in a sash clamp, I can only probably get two on, and that will tend to make the board bow. So by doing it flat on the bench should be good. We can get a bit more pressure and get glue. I can line things up. So we're going to use that as a gluing up platform. So obviously the top, bottom, two sides we need to glue together. So at the moment they're sat here drying, so I glued them up. Put sash clamps on here, strap batten on the side just to stop us marking it. Little spring clamp, help me just get things nice and level. So all of those are glued, ready to go for the next stage. Then once they've dried nicely, we're going to leave them a few hours. I can sand the inside face, and then we can actually glue that together as a box. Alright, so we've got everything glued up at the moment as far as we can get. We've got to glue the main box up in a sec, but next thing we can look at while it's drying a little bit, how the legs are going to fit in. Now the legs we want to set a little bit of a taper angle so they come out. That kind of, how are we going to do that? And the legs were a real sort of thing of, what can I play with? How can we do it? So set up an angle, worked out things. Let's start playing around with, could we make, in reality, a round tenon? Okay, so now if you can hopefully see what we've got on there. I'll move it about just a little bit. Alright, now it's also not square. So actually when it goes into a hole, we can set it up to an angle. Alright, so how simple is that? Yeah, right, okay, so how to make that? What can we do? First thing we've obviously done, we know we can cut the boards or the legs to an angle. So on the top of these, I've cut them all to the same angle. Exactly the same as you've just looked at. Then I need some way of producing that tenon. So how are we going to do it? So I've made up simple routing jig. This is box. So all I've done for this is screw two bits of plywood together at right angles down the length, longer than we need. Inside, a couple of little bits of 9mm MDF. That just produces an offset position. So therefore, when we do the routing with this, the cutter's not hitting the side. So these go in and they're spaced off the side, so the router cutter's got a bit of movement, doesn't cut all the plywood out. That will go in. I can have something as a clamp. Hold that back in place on the corner. As long as I set these up level, let's just flip this over to the top. Then I can run the router on here in a second and we can show you how we can cut that. So this is quite simple little jig, but takes a little bit of thinking about. In reality, it just works on having the offset on the top of that angle that you're requiring for the angle of the legs. So let's get one set up and then we'll show you how it works. Got the leg in place, we have the angle that comes down, jig we positioned, little block on here with a V cut out 90 degrees. The clamp, so the clamp we have, interesting feature, it has a little plastic cover on here, has a V cut out so it will sit nicely on the back of the jig and allow me to clamp that up and hold things. So that's quite a unique little feature, that will grip that nicely on the back, won't fall off. We've levelled things up on the top here. So that's giving us that location now. Next thing, the router. Got a position where our tenon's going to go. So on the top of the leg I've marked corner to corner. I have a centre line, I've come 5mm forward. It's just really effective the angle where that joint comes in. I can pinpoint that bird cage all, right? Just to drill a small hole. It's pine, it'll drill easy. Then we want something to follow as a template. I've still got to adjust my leg a little bit, but we want something as a template. So all I've got is round disc. How did I make that? Barrel cutter. And then just put a hole in the middle. What does that allow us to do? We can screw these on. That's that fitted. Now we can adjust the leg back down with the jig. That's good. So that's set up. Now at this point the leg isn't cut to length. All we've really done, we've left them a bit over length, and we're setting up there. That means if anything happens on this, we've got the scope, we can readjust it, but that's good. Router, got a smaller roll again. I've changed the base, little homemade base. So a piece of perspex, drilled the holes, centre hole, just so I've got something a bit bigger to bridge across that area, add a bit more support. Need to set the cutting depth, so we know we've got a depth stop. The cutter, I can, if I undo the lock there, we can bring it down 0. That's down touching the top of our leg. We can bring the depth stop down. Okay, our board material is 18mm thick, so in reality I need to bring our depth stop up less than 18, so 10, that's 15, down to there. Okay, so we've zeroed the cutter off the workpiece, and then we're setting what we want as a depth in here. Ready to go. Again, just having a feel, see what's going on. A little bit dustier doing this. Let's take our guide plate off and do a screw of the clamp, and take that clamp out the corner with that bracket. Take our leg off. Things a little bit clean. Chest fit, we've got hole drilled to match the size. Oh, look at that. Isn't that nice? That'll go. A little bit tight, but I'm pretty sure when we get to it, that will tap down and go in. Next thing, just to check, I can do that down on the board, that we're not going to come all the way through. There's that risk. I can still trim, right? So I can look at what we have on our board material. I could use a scrap bit. We've got about 3mm depth. Alright, we can always trim a little bit off the top of these if we need to. But you can see how hopefully that's going to give you a nice clean round shoulder, cut to that funny angle. Alright, so you just watched us come round now. Depth of cut's not massive, but we're actually going around the outside square first, taking a shoulder, coming round nice and slowly so you don't splinter the corners off. We don't want to break those off further down. And then gradually take a circle bit. Then lower it again, go around the outside. So the offset of the little bits of 9mm MDF gives us a gap all the way round. Even if the bearing of the cutter touches the side, it's not going anywhere. That won't bite or dig in, but you want to control that. And then you get a nice clean circle, no breakout on the top of those corners. Why do this bit before we shape the whole leg? If we shape the whole leg beforehand, we might have more problems holding it. We've also got the risk you might dent it, damage it. So you might dent and damage the things that you've just created and then have to clean it up again. So at this stage, it's better probably to do a shaping for this, get the tenon to fit, then we can shape whatever we want to do on the leg. So 2 more of those to go. So we've got to cut the legs to length. Now we've done our tenon, best time we can cut it. That way, if we've made any mistake on these, we can always retrim them off, then adjust it. So we cut those to an angle. We need the same angle on the bottom. So we've got our sliding bevel. I could check our angle. I know it's right. we can check it against the saw. So we could lay that in, check no one's been in and used it, that's good. Our leg, I've laid them all out in the same order, so the taper's going away from me, up to our lamp stop. Got our angle set. Alright, so we cut the legs to length. I've now quartered the bottoms of them just with a pencil. Okay, I've drawn a little circle in the corner, which is going to be the kept bit, which we're going to taper the legs. So that's the bit I want to keep. I've laid them out so I get 4 and 1 in each corner. Alright, so at that point, done. I've also then, this end, got a stop line. Alright, comes round as a guide. And this is really just to give me a guide of where they need to be. Then we can run that down from there. Pencil, again, giving us a guide of where we got to cut. So we're going to cut down for there. Going to roll it over one. Now I've got to think about where we are on the bandsaw in a minute. Going from there, that's going to cut down through. That side, come down through. Which edge do we want? I'm going to label that one now. Right, so just thinking about where it's going to be visual, and that will make more sense in a second as well. Right, so we've drawn on our tapered section now where what bit we're left. Okay. Next thing, then we're going to go to the bandsaw and we're going to cut the taper. So in the bandsaw, we're going to use a taper cut jig. So this has handle, a pivot mechanism. We can move it. Got a stop right down on this point, so that grips the workpiece in reality. We can use this in here, table saw, different aspects. So we've drawn our line on. I'm looking at where I want to keep, which bit I want to cut off. So at this point I can lay it in place. I can adjust my angle. Now I'm coming out to where my start line is here. What's that touch? Just about there. So let's lock that off. That's just touching on the very front here. Then I want to know where it's going to emerge to on the other end. So if we take the workpiece out, let's just check we've locked it. We slide it through, and I look from the back of the workpiece in through here. I can see where my pencil line is. So we can bring that in up to our line. If anything, we're just a little bit over. So I'm going to adjust our fence just a tiny bit. Less than a millimetre. That's good. That gives me just a little bit to clean up. So check that's locked. Double check back in here, cut once. No, not bad. They're just off our line. We want to plane them up, get them smooth, so that'll be good. Then I've got to think about stability. If I cut this one first and we turn it over, it's going to fall over. If we cut it there, that'll work. So at the moment, this one we can cut, and then rotate it through 90 degrees and take the second cut. So think about which bit you're cutting before you start. Make sure it's in place so you can see what's happening. Okay, so back from the bandsaw. We've got them cut, we've got these beautiful wedges. I mean, glue them together, maybe make something door stops. They're big door stops, but okay, that'll be good. We'll hold on to those maybe. I want to clean up the surfaces now that we've just bandsaw cut. just to get rid of the rough. So then when we route them in a minute, it's not going to show. Okay, so we got our little circle, that's good. I'm going to bring that in, so I put stop on the bench, anchored it down. You could use G-clamp. We've got a little bit of square right on the top, so that's what I'm going to pinch on. Just on there. Then we're going to go bedrock style plane. See if we can get on there just, if anything. Give me a bit more room just this end. Let's come back a little bit with our stop. Now we've got them cut and I know where they are. Going to make it easier to see where things are. So let's just adjust that. That's better. That'll drop me down a little bit this end. Just cleaning that up. I think we've got a little bit of cut one side more than the other. Let's have a quick look. Ooh, you can't beat that feel of cleaned up pine, nice and clean. Ooh, all right, bring it round one. So other side now, got to go down through there. So again, over the band, so I tend to get a little bit of hollow on the taper jig. Nothing much, it just takes a bit of effort. Okay, one done. They're quite nice. Got a shape, little round circle, pretty much down to a square on the bottom. Going to run through, get the others done. Yeah. So we've got them down, clean them up, a little bit to clean up on the top. Next place, going to the router table. So next aim to round the corners off. So we put a round over cutter in the table. That's all ready to go. I've set my height. So we're going to come along, do all four edges. The bottom, therefore, will almost be a total circle. Higher up, you still come back up to the square, but with the corners knocked off. So I'm going to give an optical effect of something that's squarer coming down to that round leg. Alright, so at the router table, so we've got round over cutter, similar to that loaded, okay? Bearing guided. I have the bearing in line with the fence line. I brought the cutter up just so a maximum cut. Alright, so ready to go. Earmuffs. So now onto the pillar drill, we can cut the recesses for the leg. They are square, which is beautiful, makes it so much easier. So we can drill round hole to match that round tenon we made. I've got marked out lines where I'm going to be, so that's going to be good. I've done a depth stop, so we know we're not going all the way through. That'd be embarrassing. Bottom and underside, make sure you get that right. Check your dovetail shapes, all those little things. Be embarrassing now, wouldn't it, get it wrong? So, in that stage, we can drill our hole. Alright, I'm just getting impatient. We've still got to sand this, we've got to sand the board, but it'd just be nice to see that going in. They fit beautifully. I'm almost pleased with that. Look at that. Woo! So next stage, got to clean this all up. So I've got to sand all the boards. We're going to do all the insides. Once we've done the inside, we can glue the main box together. We can clean the legs up, then we can clean up the outside of the main box. Alright, so the next few stages really sand these up on the inside, ready to glue it up. Whilst it's gluing, we can clean the legs up. So only the inside, okay? Made sure, got rid of all the glue down the glue joint there, a few little beads of glue. We've got the underside we can do, we've got obviously our hole drill. So the next big thing really will be get ready to glue it all together as a box. Whilst it's gluing, as you said, we can then tackle the legs and get them cleaned up. So we got to that time when we need to glue everything together. So we've got our carcass material, that box, all those dovetails cut. I've test fitted things that will go back together, but we've already done that once. Sanded up all the inside, outside isn't sanded yet, we can clean that up as we go through. So the next bit really is to glue up. So it's laid out in sequence on how it's got to go. So let's put this in here. And the glasses. The glue on the joints in here. A little bit fiddly this, and this is why we put it in the vise. We obviously want enough glue, but not too much. Start one end. Now I've got the aspect on here, get a little bit of rock or movement across the board. So I've got to apply that. Quite wide this, so we've got to force it along all the way across. Okay, looks like we're glued up, pulled together nicely. Got the clamps on the side. The battens are giving me something that help pull it square as well. Might need a few clamps to pull it together this way, right? But at the moment, looks good. Got a little bit of glue on the inside. Always going to get a little bit, aren't we? So, some warm water and cloth. I always debate on at this stage. Do I do it now or do I let it dry and chisel it up? So, not a lot in there. That one's pretty good actually, the bottom corner. Don't want too much because we've sanded. This is going to raise the grain. So we've got to be a little bit careful on what we cut and take out. Little glue spatula. It might not look a lot, but that's right in the corner. Alright, so things like this can be really good just to get right into that edge. Let's get cloth that I know is a bit cleaner. Clean there. Now I know there was more glue from here, so I'm just going to pop round the front, pull that out. So we need to get those all cleaned up, and then we need to let it dry. The outside, not too worried about at the moment. We've got to sand that off, cleaned up when we're done. So that can be left like it is. It's really that inside face. So at this point, we'll leave it to dry. Right, so that's all the heavy sand done. So the dovetails we deliberately left just a little bit long. So I've sanded them back. You could do block plane, but there's always that risk you're going to chip them out. If you're going to do hem plane, remember you've got to come in off the edge, clear them up nicely. Likewise, go in the way from that edge off. Alright, stopping out the spring edge, especially on the front edge as well. So sander can be easier to do. Quite coarse grade to start with, 80 grit, 180 to finish. So they look really good, cleans them up. Probably going to sand it anyway when you finish, so that's the easier option. Underneath, 4 little UJK anti-slip pads. So these fit into the bench holes or the path dog holes, and that allows us just to sit on, not scratch it, won't slip about as well when we sand. So really useful little bits. So at that stage we've sanded main carcass. We need to sand the legs, so I've got one just to do with a hand sand, and most of this will be hand sand. You've got a flat section coming down, round bit on the bottom, so you've got to play with those just to sand those up. Now at that stage, we're ready to put the legs into that main bit of the carcass. So that's the next stage. So, cleaned up, come back in the workbench room, out the prep room. Now we're looking at that stage we can glue the legs in. Nearly finished, okay, which is good. Now our legs hopefully are going to fit nice and tight in these holes we've done. They fit good. I've got some blocks, so actually if I wanted I could clamp them on the side and use them as a pull block to steady it and keep it in place. So we could do a G-clamp across it and pull it down. But I'm hoping I've got enough tension on there that they're going to grip nicely. They look like they will, which in other words I can push them in and walk away from them, let them dry. Next decision, do we want them square off the side, like this one? Or, if you really wanted, you could have them set up on an angle. Choice is kind of yours. Let's just do a quick flip round. Okay. So hopefully you can see they look a little bit different. How they splay out, all that sort of thing might give you an idea. So more glue on the tenon section than on the flat. So side grain against side grain is better than end grain on side grain. It also obviously means we're not going to get too much squeeze out when you put this together. Tiny little bit, that's good. Check it's square. Check it's all the way down. That looks good. First one done. Going to run right down the other side. I'm trying to do the back two first because they're further away from me. Just make my life a bit easier that I don't have to reach around them. That's enough glue for all of them. Other important thing I've done, clean out the holes in the table frame. So I've hoovered those out. Quite a bit of dust goes in those when you're doing the sanding. Grab our square again. Good. Now I'm doing a quick visual eye up, down across the leg, checking where things look here, parallel, so they're looking level, not out of line here. Checking on the table frame, they're sat square. Bring the glue back round, shorter distance to travel with everything, less spillage and drops. So, having glued up, let's just carefully set that there. Right, get a bit of wobble. Bit there. Better. Check my benches, right? The leg looks round a bit, but I can't tweak that. Got a little bit of spring in the legs, so I know they will spring back a bit. That's better there. So now we just checked where they're sat to. I'm just looking to make sure we haven't pulled anything off of that glue joint. So now we need to let it dry. So that patience thing's quite important. So there you go. One little bedside table. Something that looks so simple and quite an interesting project to do. So from the dovetail jig, tapered legs, all those little things come together. Weird thing for me to play with, trying to do the dovetail jig and join two boards together after. That's quite an experience as well, something I've never tried. So that worked really nice. The pin in the middle can't even see the join line, which is great. So you can make something wider with quite a narrow dovetail jig. That's something really to look at, okay? Only stage we've got to look at on this at some point, really, what we're going to polish it with, but that depends on who's getting this. So they're going to have a look and fit that into their home. So we've left it in the white. That's purely the reason. De-arrowed the edges, cleaned everything up. Looks fantastic now. So something is a fun project. So we've done things like our offset leg using the router, the dovetail jig, quite basic stuff, and the taper cut jig as well to give you that shape on those legs. I've had a few people look at the legs in here and go, how do you make those? Got to watch the video. So hopefully you have. All right? So hopefully you have enjoyed this. Vast range of different things. If you want to see more videos where we're doing this sort of thing, hit that subscribe button. You'll get those notifications come up and tell you what we're doing, okay? I try and put a bit of effort into this. If you've liked, give me the thumbs up. Go on, because I want to know you've appreciated this. I mean, it's a weird thing we put, like I say, time and effort into doing a vid. You'll watch it, and I don't get any joy out of you've enjoyed it. That's fun, okay? So hit that thumbs up button, that notification, you'll get all those things. If you want to see what we've used, obviously there's a list of equipment there. There's also the cutting list and everything else, right? So that's down in that thing down there, right? So you know where it is, right? So hopefully, like I say, you've enjoyed this as a project. You could make a pair so simple to do once you've got the hang of where you are. A little bit of time setting up. Don't need to have anything too flashy as material. I love the fact on this how the grain continues around that carcass as well. So again, we'll show you that as a bit of a shot in a minute. But hopefully you've enjoyed. Go leave it with you.